right, hello and welcome to the 2021 Better Buildings Summer Webinar Series. In this series, we are profiling the best practices of Better Buildings Challenge and Alliance partners and other organizations working to improve energy efficiency in buildings. My name is Hannah Debelius, and I'll be your moderator for today. I'm a fellow in the Building Technologies Office, and I have the wonderful privilege of working on the Better Buildings program with our higher education partners. And today we are going to be discussing financing in higher education and how we'll be exploring some different options and creative solutions that you all can finance your renovations on campus and building upgrades for sustainability. We are excited to announce today that we will be using an interactive platform called Slido for Q&A. So right now, if you could go to either your phone or open up another browser window and go to slido.com, you are then going to enter the event code DOE. And what we're going to do is that this platform is going to help us do some polls. We can get to know our audience a little bit better. And also that's where we'll be accepting Q&A for all of our speakers today. So again, go ahead right now and open up either a new browser or your mobile device. Go to slido.com and then enter in the event code DOE. All right. I'll also mention now that you can put in questions anytime to Slido, and we'll get to those at the very end. And you can also thumbs up those questions that are already in there. So if you see one that you like, you can hit that like button, and then it'll move up to the top so that we can prioritize that when we get to it. So with that, we'd like to learn a little bit more about you. So we can go ahead and launch our first poll. Wonderful. Our first question is that we know that a lot of our audience today is representing a higher education institution. So for those of you that are representing one, can you please tell us what classification is your institution? All right, a lot of doctoral and master's colleges and universities or baccalaureate colleges, a couple of associate colleges. That's wonderful. We have all of those institutions represented today. I'm also curious to see if we have any tribal college or HBCUs in line. And again, we're using Slido, so it's not too late to go to slido.com and then put in the event code DOE. That's where we're doing this polling. All right, a couple of special focus institutions. Wonderful, thank you so much. We appreciate learning a little bit more about our audience. So with that, we're gonna go to our second poll question. And that is, what type of financing mechanisms has your institution completed or explored to finance building renovations or sustainability projects? You can take a moment and think through this list here. We'd love to hear more about it. All right, our first response is none of the above, which is great because it means you've come to the right place if you're looking to learn more. All right, so internal financing, we know that that's one of the most common options for a higher education institution. Performance contracting, green revolving funds, a couple of people doing third-party loans. Could you scroll down to see if anyone has put in and 3% for efficiency as a service, and a couple for green bonds. All right, excellent. Great, well, I appreciate you all giving us some feedback. So now Slido will return to collecting Q&A. So again, you can put in those questions anytime. I should have mentioned at the beginning, but this is a really special webinar today because we're actually doing it in partnership with the National Association for College and University Business Offers. So Megan from NACUBO has joined us today. They're a wonderful Better Buildings affiliate partner, and it's great that we get to partner on this and find that common ground where we can mass financing and sustainability. So Megan Schneider currently serves as a Senior Director for Government Affairs at NACUBO. And prior to joining NACUBO, she worked in the Federal Relations Office of the University of Arizona, where she served as a liaison between the university and the federal government. So Megan, we'd love to hear a little bit more about NACUBO and the partnership that brought us together today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hannah. We are thrilled to be partnering with the Department of Energy on this webcast. As those of you that may be on the line that are NACUBO members know, you know that we love promoting the Better Buildings webinar series. It contains so much good information for our higher education members. We're thrilled to be partnering with the Department of Energy. But for those that you may not be, that are on the line that may not be familiar with NACUBO, I'd love to tell you a little bit more about us. As Hannah mentioned, we are the National Association of College and University Business Officers. If we just want to go to the next slide, there's a little bit more on there as well. So NACUBO is a nonprofit professional organization. We represent the CFOs and Chief Business Officers of colleges and universities. Many of you watching today may fall into that category, but we also do policy work in all of the various functions that often fall into business reporting lines, which frequently those in the sustainability space, those in the facilities management space, which is why we've really valued our partnership with the Department of Energy over the years. NACUBO represents more than 1,600 nonprofit college and university members, both public and private, both 2-year and 4-year institutions. So we're very familiar with the fact that sustainability and energy efficiency needs vary quite a bit across the higher ed landscape. And of course, NACUBO's mission is to advance the economic vitality, business practices, and support of higher education institutions in pursuit of their missions. And we're just so delighted to be partnering with the department today. Thanks, Anna.
Great, thanks so much, Megan. Great to hear from you all and partner on this webinar. We have 3 wonderful speakers with us today: Dr. Morgan Olson of Arizona State University, Elaine Sadowski of the Community College of Allegheny County, and Kyle Saltzman of RETAC Advisors, who'll be sharing a little bit more on the solutions and options that we have for better buildings. So I'll be introducing each of our panelists as they come up and speak. And again, I remind you, you can go to slido.com anytime to submit questions, and we'll save plenty of time at the end to address those. So first, I would like to introduce Dr. Morgan Olson, who's the Executive Vice President, Treasurer, and Chief Financial Officer at Arizona State University. He is ASU's Chief Business and Financial Officer and holds an appointment as Professor of Practice in the Mary Lou Fulton College of Education. His responsibilities at ASU include overseeing treasury and financial functions, capital projects, real estate, facilities operations, human resources, police, environmental health and safety, information technology, and business and auxiliary services at the university's 5 campuses. So he's not busy at all, but he's made time for us here today. So with that, Morgan, if you want to unmute yourself and turn on your camera, we'd hope to hear a little bit more about you all at ASU.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and good morning or good afternoon to our audience, depending on where you are in the country today. If you would advance the slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about 3 different types of approaches that we use to advance energy projects on our campuses. But let me say just a word or two about Arizona State University first. We're a big place, and so a lot of our numbers tend to be kind of big. We have about 70,000 students that we call immersion students that are located on one of our 4 physical campuses throughout the valley here in Greater Phoenix. We have a built environment of over 27 million gross square feet. Most of that's here in the valley. We do have a physical location on each coast of the country, and through some of our operations are actually active around the globe now. So things are complicated. We do use a lot of energy. We spend over $32 million a year on various types of energy purchases, mostly electricity and gas, and sustainability and making sure that we are managing and minimizing the impact on our planet is a very important part of what we do. We had the first school of sustainability in the country. We offered the first PhD in sustainability. And so we think it's really important that we try to practice what we preach. And so what we do with our practices as an organization in the way of sustainability and energy conservation are really important to us. So the next slide talks a little bit about 3 of the approaches that we use: utility rebates, power purchase agreements, and then finally our SURF, or Sustainability Initiatives Revolving Fund, sometimes known as a green fund. Each one of these is important for different reasons. They have different scales, but we have found that they're both helpful to us in terms of coming up with the resources that are necessary to make the investments that help us advance in the area of sustainability and energy conservation, and they help us also engage the university community. You know, one of the things that we do at universities, in fact, the most important thing we do is that we help students reach their educational goals. And, you know, as a part of that, they're going to go out into the world and they're going to, you know, model these values and these practices. And, you know, we're a small part of the energy footprint of our country, but, you know, we train virtually 100% of the future leaders of our country. And so, you know, what they experience on our campuses is truly important in terms of reaching some of these goals. So the next slide talks a little bit about utility rebates. You know, by our scale, these are relatively small, but many states have, often through their utilities or some special governmental entity that's been set up, the opportunity to earn certain rebates if one makes investments in various types of projects or has a certain shape to its use of energy, and there are some other examples as well. In our case, you know, we've been able to address the envelope of our buildings, you know, how we manage our IT infrastructure, what we do in the way of heating, ventilating, and air conditioning equipment, how that's managed, what the use patterns are, lighting is a big one, et cetera. And this just shows the last 3 years in terms of the rebates that we've received each year. Relatively small in terms of the dollars, but I think it does provide incentives, you know, to all of us. I think we all have sort of a competitive nature to us, and so doing exactly what the term incentive would suggest. It's incenting us to do the things that we probably ought to be doing in terms of our use of energy. And so that's a strategy that we try to follow. There's lots of public policy that is important in other areas that I'm going to mention as well. And so, you know, being aware of what those opportunities are and taking advantage of the ones that make sense for your institution, we have found are you know, important things for us to do. The next slide talks a little bit about the areas probably have the biggest carbon footprint impact for Arizona State University, and that is our goal over time to be carbon neutral. Our president, Michael Crow, was one of the initial signatories of what was known as the President's Climate Commitment. And so institutions of higher education across the country have been part of that, and I think made a real difference in terms of how we are able to manage, you know, our energy use. So basically what we're doing here is, through working with third parties, the power of partnership we think is really important for us, is we're using the capital of those partners, third-party capital in a lot of cases. We're spreading the capital costs that's necessary to implement these strategies over time. Because we are a nonprofit entity, it's helpful to partner with a for-profit entity that is able to utilize various tax incentives. Again, that word incentive is important. And that savings that's produced by federal tax policy or state tax policy is then shared, you know, with the institution, which lowers our overall costs. And the other thing working with partners has done is it's allowed us to have access to a renewable energy that may be available in other markets. You know, energy policy and energy use can be a little bit like politics. It's all local. But what we have found is that having access to technology that may be emerging in other markets is really important to reach our goals of a zero carbon footprint and 100% sustainable energy use. So the next slide talks a little bit more about that. We have over 90 solar systems of various types on our campuses. Those are really harnessing obviously the solar power that we have available to us. If you can't do that in the Valley of the Sun, I don't know where you would. 75 of those 90 on-site solar systems were actually done with a partner through a power purchase agreement or a similar arrangement. That has produced about 35,000 megawatt hours a year of energy that we use to power our campuses. We've used that for shade structures that cover our parking lots, and also served as congregation points. On the right, you see one that is over our softball field. So the Sun Devils play women's softball on that field. And in the middle is something we call a power parasol. This happens to be near one of our libraries and our student union. It is a power plant, but it also provides in our climate a very nice shaded location, for all kinds of outdoor activities on our Tempe campus. And so these are very important to our strategy. The next slide will show you where we're going now. We have found that the economy of scale that's available on a very large or grid scale renewable energy projects is superior to what we're able to do with the smaller systems on our campuses. And so we have done 3 of those projects. One of those you see on the left there, that is a 400-acre solar farm that happens to sit in Red Rock, Arizona, between Phoenix and Tucson. We purchased the majority of the power for that plant that was constructed for one of our major utility partners, a public utility. The remainder of that was purchased by PayPal, and that is delivered to us, and we use that power to reduce our carbon footprint and the share of renewable electricity. On the right is a picture of the Armadillo Flats wind power energy plant, and this, unlike the solar plant I just mentioned, actually sits in the state of Oklahoma. And so we have a virtual public power agreement there that essentially is also known as a contract for differences. We purchase that power that's produced by the wind turbines, and then we sell that to a third party while retaining the renewable energy attributes as part of our goal of reducing our total carbon footprint. And then we have a third project that will be another solar plant with our other major regulated utility provider in the state of Arizona that will allow us to essentially have about 2/3 of our electricity use as renewable green energy. The remainder is something we'll be focused on in the future and is largely around substituting for what is now natural gas powered combined heat and power plants on our campuses that we have for reliability and redundancy as a major research university. The next slide talks a little bit about what we're doing in the area of a green fund, or SURF in our case is what we like to call it. We've had this in place for a little bit over a decade. There are 3 levels of projects and they have a little bit different approach for each of them. Tier 1 is something that we use to really work to engage our student body. Our students are really creative and smart, and we want to harness all of that brain power that they have. They're also very committed, to a more sustainable world, and so they're concerned about what we do at the university with our sustainability practices. They often have very good ideas, and so we're able through this program to provide them with some funding, to actually implement these ideas. We have larger projects that we do as well. Tier 2, which might be something that a school or a college or a department would do, and then Tier 3, which is usually a central project that we have that is more capital intensive and has a longer payback period. But we have a cross-functional committee of folks across the university that evaluates all these projects, and it's like applying for a grant. And ultimately, the chief financial officer signs off on these projects. And the next slide shows you a little bit about how that works. So as I mentioned, Tier 2 and 3, we tend to have a little more formal financial criteria there. We look for net present value of greater than $10,000, and we hope for an internal rate of return of greater than 8%. We do allow for the more capital intensive Tier 3 projects a little bit longer payback period for those things. We are benefiting from the financial attributes of that, but really probably more important is making sure that things happen that we think are important to being a good partner and a good sustainable global citizen as a university. And so we want to allow for those things that might have a little bit longer payback but are really important in terms of the sustainability attributes. And then the next slide is really kind of a summary here, and this seminar is really about financing these types of investments. We all know that we've been through a challenging period here this last 18 months, and even before, universities have lots of great ideas looking for funding, and so there's always a challenge for financial resources. So anytime you can come up with some strategies to make some of these things happen, you know, it's a good day. So utility rebates, basically using other people's money, OPM, and you know, those typically you don't have to pay back. So that's wonderful when you find those opportunities. PPAs, you use other people's money and pay those people back, your partner, slowly over time. And then, of course, the SURF fund, we also want to use our own money, and we try to make sure that those projects pay ourselves back. And what that does is it creates sort of this virtuous cycle where we make some investments, we implement them, we generate savings, often against our utilities budget, and then we use those savings to create that cycle by reinvesting in the next round of projects. So those are some of the things that we do at ASU, and I'm looking forward to listening to the projects that my colleagues have, and I appreciate your time this morning.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Morgan. We really appreciate it. You covered a lot of ground there, and no wonder, because ASU has been doing such wonderful sustainability work for a while now. So really appreciate those insights. And I know PPAs in particular has been on the minds of lots of people in higher ed that we've been speaking to for a while. Next up, we have Elaine Sadowski of the Community College of Allegheny County. Elaine is the Director of Energy and Sustainability at the Community College of Allegheny County. She has many years of experience in local government, educational institutions, small industrial and commercial energy management. Her projects for CCAC include energy performance contracts for the college as well as the county, and she initiated the solar power purchase agreement for CCA. Elaine is a member of AEE and ASHRAE and is certified energy manager. Wonderful. Looks like we can see and hear you, I think, Elaine, so go ahead and take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to share our experiences. First, if you go to the next slide, please. A little bit about CCAC. We are a community college located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We were founded in 1966. We have an annual enrollment full-time equivalent of 24,000 credit and 17,515 non-credit students. We have the conventional college type programs in arts and humanities, business, education, social sciences, human services, health-related professions, STEM. We also teach skilled trades. We have 4 campuses and 4 centers, and that's approximately 1.6 million square feet of buildings. And our annual energy and water bill is about $3.5 million. Next slide, please. We have a lot of challenges. We live pretty much hand-to-mouth, financed by some funding from the state and Allegheny County, and also through the tuition that we charge our students. But we are hesitant to raise the tuition because for many of our students, even our existing tuition is too much, even though it's relatively low. We have a lot of aging facilities. A lot of them were built in the 60s and 70s. The equipment in them is reaching the end of its useful life. A few of our facilities are over 100 years old. We have set ourselves ambitious energy and water saving goals. We're members both of the DOE Better Buildings Challenge and the Pittsburgh 2030 district. But we have limited capital, and there are limits, legal limits to the amount of indebtedness we can incur. We need to rein in our operating costs and keep from raising tuition. This is something that our Board of Trustees is very emphatic about. We try to keep our costs as low as possible so that although we are very much interested in saving money, we look at it as a cost-saving thing first, and then as a sustainability goal. So our aims are not quite like ASU's. Next slide, please. Our first case study is our South Campus. It's a 278,000 square foot building. It's basically one big building, 1970s vintage. The equipment was antiquated, inefficient. It was a maintenance nightmare. We practically had contractors living in the boiler room trying to repair the equipment to just keep it running. We didn't think we could make it through another heating and cooling season when we started this project. This building had a $624,000 annual energy and water bill, and the pre-retrofit source EUI was 267.9 thousand BTUs per square feet, which was outrageous. So next slide, please. Because of this aged, failing central plant, it consisted of a boiler, chillers, and pumps. We could have just replaced the existing equipment with a new one of what it originally was, but we decided to frame this as an energy saving project so that we could go into an energy guaranteed savings contract and pay for our new physical plant through the energy savings that we incur. We went out for a bond, and we've set it up so that we have guaranteed savings that will cover our bond payment for the 15-year life of the bond. And we're actually exceeding the savings that we predicted. We replaced 2 steam boilers and steam absorption chillers with new electric chillers and hot water boilers. The basic need for the steam boilers was to operate the chillers. And I believe this was done back in the 70s. Our local electric utility had extremely high demand charges. And I believe this was done in order to counteract some of the effects of those charges. But it came out being far less efficient than a conventional system and costing us a whole lot more money. Next slide, please. So what we did some lighting upgrades because they have a quick payback and help to provide funding for the other measures. We did some water conservation upgrades, including low flow plumbing fixtures. We installed new boilers, new chillers, new pumps, new switchgear, expanded the building automation system. We retro-commissioned everything that was not replaced. And this led to some interesting findings as well. Next slide, please. In addition to the plumbing fixtures, the new chillers required far less cooling water. So our cooling tower water consumption was lowered dramatically. And because we had a much more efficient central plant, we decreased our gas and electricity costs as well. Next slide, please. This is just some additional information about the retrofits that we did, if anybody's interested. Next slide. And this is a visual. On the left, you see the old boilers, and on the right, the new boilers. We actually opened up so much space in the boiler room that we now rent it out for weddings and bar mitzvahs. Not really, but we really did empty out the boiler room. The next one is the cooling system, the old absorbers and the new electric chillers. Next, please. And these are our pumps, the old ones and the new ones. And everything is variable speed drive, much more efficient than the originals. Next, please. This is a little more about what we did. One of the things that we found when we did the retro commissioning, this building has served by the central plant 400 or 500 individual unit ventilators in all of the classrooms. And these also are a maintenance nightmare. So when we went through these, we found a lot of freeze stats that were not functioning, among a lot of other things. But that just doing that saved us from having to replace some of these units when they would freeze up over the winter. Next, please. This is the financial picture. We spent almost $4 million and we had a $4 million bond. We anticipated a total savings of $269,000 a year. Next, please. Our energy and water annual dollar savings were projected to be $241,441. Our actual energy and water cost savings during the first complete year of operation were $283,558. So we're actually getting even some positive cash flow after we pay off our bond. Our source EUI was lowered to 168.5, which is about 35%. And we've been holding pretty steadily at a decrease in energy and water costs of about 43%. Next. Our next case study is a power purchase agreement. This is our North Campus. It has an area of about 150,000 square feet. It was constructed in 1990, excuse me, from an old department store. And it's actually the most efficient of our campuses with a source EUI of 129.7 at the end of 2019. Our energy cost is almost $200,000 a year, and 77% of that is for electricity. We have higher electric costs at this facility because it's served by another local distribution company, as well as it being the only campus served by this company. So we have higher per kilowatt hour costs than any of our other sites. We thought maybe because of that, it would be a good idea to explore some solar energy. Next, please. So we looked at power purchase agreements. I was given permission to go ahead with a solar project as long as I didn't spend any money. So that was my framework. We went through the Pennsylvania Solar Center's Get Solar program, and they provide technical assistance to Pennsylvania nonprofit and residential people on project financing, technical assistance in acquiring power purchase agreements, and also with project bundling so that we can get lower rates by bundling several smaller projects together so that there are economies of scale. We were able to get a power purchase agreement with a rate lower than we are currently paying for electricity, and we can produce enough energy to supply 30 to 40% of the building's load. And we estimate this will save us about $27,000 a year. We have not kept the renewable energy credits. Our financing entity is doing that our board of trustees preferred to have the greater cost savings than to purchase the green attributes of the energy. Next, please. This is just a brief description of a power purchase agreement. Again, it allows us to take advantage of somebody else's capital, somebody else's tax credits, somebody else's accelerated depreciation on a solar system, and we just pay them for the electricity that they generate. They take care of the system, they maintain it, and we just reap the benefits. Next, please. This is a conception of what the system will look like when it is complete. We expect to start on it in September. We're going through all the paperwork now. The nice thing about this is that the power purchase agreement spells out the cost of the electricity that we will pay over the term of the agreement. So we know for budgeting purposes what we will be paying. And because the third party owns and operates the system, we don't have to worry about any of the maintenance. And the third party also is incentivized to maintain their system at peak production so that they can generate as much electricity as possible. Next, please. Some of the questions you will get if you start exploring a power purchase agreement is, why is it for such a long period? And that's because there's a substantial capital cost, and it has to be amortized over a long period. So, you know, these are questions I actually got from our law department. They find the length of this agreement rather odd. Why are we buying all of the electricity produced by the array, even if we don't use it? And that's because we'll be able to sell anything that we don't use back into the grid. So those are questions your legal people may ask you about. We used the Solar Energy Industries Association model agreement, and that covers a lot of the questions that people ask when you try to enter into a PPA. It covers things like what happens if we sell the building, defaults, etc. So next, please.
Elaine, yeah, I think you just got this your last slide. So if you just want to spend 30 seconds, then we'll move forward. Thanks so much, Elaine.
Right. A couple of things to look out for. Choose your baseline carefully. The COVID shutdowns have skewed a lot of energy and water consumption patterns. So don't choose a COVID year for your baseline. Be careful of maintenance savings estimates. Some of them are real and measurable. Some of them aren't. Some of them are kind of made up and inflated. Pay attention to the contractual cost escalation rates for energy, and check out model documents that governmental and trade associations have prepared that give you a framework for entering into some of these agreements. And the last thing is to bundle your energy measures so that things that pay back quickly can help you to pay for more capital intensive projects. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Elaine. I really appreciate the specificity that you had on a lot of those projects. And also, it's too bad we're all on mute because I actually did laugh out loud about your joke, renting out that space from the boilers. Next up, we have Kyle Saltzman, who's a senior consultant at RETEC Advisors, where he supports the financial allies participating in the Better Buildings Challenge as an account manager. Prior to joining RETEC, he spent 5 years working as an operations and product manager at Spark Fund, a technology subscription company based in DC and an active financial ally. And with that, Kyle, we're looking forward to hearing more about some financial solutions.
Yeah, hi everyone. And wanted to start with a quick thank you to both Hannah and NACUBO for organizing this webinar, and thank you all for your time and attention today. Really looking forward to getting to your questions, so I'll try to keep my remarks as quick as possible. My pleasure today is to lay out the ways that the DOE's Better Buildings Challenge supports third-party financing in the higher education context. During the previous presentations, you saw some in-depth explorations of how power purchase agreements, bonds, and performance contracting were used to help ASU and CCAC all execute their projects. I'll be discussing some of the resources on the Better Buildings Solution Center and how you can use them to answer any questions you have about not only those materials, but any form of third-party financing option. We hope that would be under consideration for you and your opportunities. To tell you a bit more about myself, obviously, Kyle Saltzman, based in DC, and at Retech Advisors, we help run the Better Buildings Challenge, or help support that program, and we help run the Financial Allies program in particular. Their participating financial allies are organizations that set goals to pledges to invest certain amounts of capital into clean projects. And I'll talk more just a little bit about how you can reach out and connect with them directly. So on this slide, I'd like to begin with a quick overview of the landscape of clean energy finance as I see it. Finance can take a variety of forms. It's had a lot of attention paid to developing a wide variety of approaches that aren't always universally applicable. Frequently, it's a matter of trying to find the right approach for the specific needs that you might have. So on the left of this diagram, we have the traditional financing options. All of these have been available for a long time for project finance generally, and are often used to be applied to clean finance projects, renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. And then on the right, there's a variety of financing approaches that have been developed that are specifically tailored to the needs of energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. They allow you to pay out of savings with no upfront capital down, or they may have billing mechanisms that are specifically tailored to not impact your balance sheet depending on the needs of your organization, which I know is something that came up during some of the previous conversations. But there's a high barrier to being able to enter this space and operate in it, given the variety of definitions and approaches that have been developed in the last, particularly in the last 5 to 10 years, as more effort is expended to try and use financing to achieve better performing buildings. To help out and to help make these financing resources more accessible, the DOE Financial Allies put together something that we call the Financing Navigator. So this includes a fact sheet detailing how each of the approaches on that page, oh, sorry, you can go stay back on that last slide for just a second more, how each of these approaches work, including their major advantages and disadvantages, and who acts in each of these spaces. And so what you're seeing here is actually a screenshot taken directly from the Navigator that you can navigate to and click on these as live icons to be able to learn more about each of these approaches. So if you go to the next page, I have some more information on the Financing Navigator. It is a nexus of resources and definitions for each of the financing approaches and is hosted on the Better Buildings Solution Center. The Solution Center generally contains a wealth of resources, toolkits, and case studies covering the learnings and sharing best practices of all of the participants across the Better Buildings Challenge, not just from the higher ed sector specifically, but also allows you to capture learnings from other similar industries as well. The Financing Navigator specifically is a widely used resource with over 25,000 unique users since launch, validating the information there for you. And you can access it using either the link on the screen here that we'll share after this presentation, or just by Googling Financing Navigator, and it's the first result that should pop up. I'm going to take the rest of my time to go through some specific resources that are on the Solution Center and accessible through the Financing Navigator that I think are going to be relevant to your interests, as well as exploring some other case studies that will cover a variety of the options that weren't necessarily explored earlier in this presentation. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see one of the other features and traits of the Navigator. So on the right-hand side, much not unlike a college campus, you're going to find that it's easier to find your way around the financing space if you have a guide, if you have a partner. So we try to make it really easy for anyone to connect with our participating financial allies. These represent a wide variety of institutions, from the largest national banks to specialty financing organizations that just focus on the single approach. And you can enter in pieces of information to help filter down so you can connect with the right financial ally if you want to reach out to a real expert on a high level basis through the Financing Navigator. We also have some resources here that are tailored specifically to the needs of the higher ed context. So we've got a primer for that pulls together a wide variety of solutions from across the Solution Center that are going to be the ones that we think are the most highly relevant to you and your interests. If you go to the next page, you're going to have a good example of one of the resources that's hosted on the Solution Center. So here, the University of Utah, we worked together to develop an implementation model diving into the green revolving funds. During Morgan's comments, he mentioned the traits of a virtuous cycle, where when you have an active program where you deploy and invest in your buildings, you generate savings that pay for that project and then some. Green revolving funds are a way to formalize and articulate and track the savings that come from these types of projects and help you build the momentum to be able to continually reinvest in your buildings. And the University of Utah case study is a great example of how this virtuous cycle was started and how they turned their initial investment into a recurring investment that repaid the initial investment multiple times over a longer period of time. On the next slide, we have another specific resource I want to bring to your attention. So the Finance and Resilience Initiative was a workflow that we undertook in recent years that yielded a number of helpful resources, including case studies that demonstrate successful resilience projects. So resilience, physical resilience to extreme weather events, as well as more general financial resilience topics are things that are a height of mind for a lot of organizations. And many different campuses are going to find themselves at a different point along their journey towards being at the point where they feel that you've addressed all forms of resilience as relevant to you. So we created a toolkit for you that has appropriate information for you at no matter what step you are on this journey. If you're just getting started, we have information there that's helpful for getting stakeholder buy-in and engaging the decision-making framework at early stages. That's helpful not just for resilience context, but any type of building investment that you're trying to build momentum around. And then there's more case studies, fact sheets, as well as example implementation models that will hopefully contain insights that will be helpful for you no matter where you are on the journey. On the next slide, we have another specific resource I want to bring to your attention. So one of the most frequently asked questions we get when it comes to third-party finance is, what is the difference between efficiency as a service and energy savings performance contracting? So we released a fact sheet that specifically delves into that issue. We had I think both presentations talked about the benefits of ESPCs, and efficiency as a service is similar in the sense that a third party is engaged to help make sure that the project is going to be successful, but they differ in a lot of contractual mechanics and impact particularly on your balance sheet and what happens during the project post completion. So we've got a fact sheet that delves into where they're similar, where they're different, and it's just an example of the type of information setting materials that we hope you'll be able to find on the Solution Center generally. If you go to the next slide, to round things up, I want to profile another case study with some learnings from a different sector. So here is a quick snapshot of an implementation model, which is also linked on this page, delving into how Iron Mountain, which is a data center participant in the Better Buildings program, worked with Redaptive, one of the financial allies, to create a scaling efficiency as a service project. So efficiency as a service engagements are built around contractually what the outcome they're trying to achieve, and they're appropriate for a wide variety of technology types. The main key for them is their scalability. So where some contracts and some projects are really easy to do on a one-off to be able to handle a specific building, they set up, these two organizations work together to make sure that they could scale the solution that they were applying. First, it was for lighting for not just a specific solution in a specific location, but across many different buildings at all the areas where Iron Mountain does business. And was that scaling trait to the project that allowed them to deploy faster than was possible just through an internal capital investment strategy. The other trait for this is that same contractual mechanism is first being used to cover lighting and some controls, with additional phases being made that much easier because there's an existing contractual framework in place to be able to expand to multiple different technologies. So if you're trying to figure out how you can do your first project or scale from your first project to multiple projects and multiple technologies, there's likely going to be some examples for you on the Solution Center, not just in higher ed, but from other sectors as well. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation back over to Hannah and to you all for question and answers.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kyle. I really appreciate that. I think that was a good way to tie together what a lot of our other speakers have also been talking about. At this point, I would love to invite our speakers to turn back on their videos and unmute themselves. And for our audience, it is not too late to submit a question. You can go to slido.com, the event code DOE, and add questions here. Or if you see a question that you like, again, you can hit that little thumbs up as somebody just did, and the question will move up to the top, and so we can prioritize that as we answer it. I can answer this first question real quickly, which is that can we get the presentation sent to us?
You're muted,
and the answer is
Hannah.
I don't think that I am, Elaine. Can other people hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Maybe it might be the volume on your computer then. And if you have an issue, Elaine, you can also again chat us in the organizers and panelists chat. We can maybe get you set up. So the first question is, can we get the presentation sent to us? So today's presentation was recorded, and we do have the slides, and we will be sending that out to all of the registered attendees. Usually it takes us about a week to get that online onto the Better Building Solution Center, but all of this will be provided to you so you can look back at the slides and access links and all that good stuff. So with that, I will now move on to our...
Sorry, go ahead, Hannah. I was just going to say, for those of you that are used to getting our webinars on demand through your My NACUBO account, this one will not be there, but it will be posted on the website.
Excellent. Thanks, Megan. So our other obvious question on content is, what, if any, okay, I'm going to still go with the second one, where there was, what, if any, state rules in Arizona and Pennsylvania limit your ability to reinvest savings to achieve clean energy goals? I'm in a state institution in North Carolina, and we only get a small portion of utility savings back to reinvest. So it sounds like that question is directed mostly towards Morgan or Elaine. So since Elaine might be having some audio issues, Morgan, if there's anything you can speak to that, we'd love to hear more about reinvesting the savings in Arizona.
Sure. Well, so I'm going to make a couple of assumptions in answering the question. That probably relates to financial management practices that a particular state may have. In Arizona, there's both good news and bad news. The good news is if we're able to generate savings against our utilities costs, we can retain them and use them in the ways that I've described or other ways. The bad news might be that we don't have a specific utilities line item, and so if our costs go up in that area, that's on us. There's not the state or anyone else to sort of bail us out on that. And so what I think that does is it provides us with a tremendous incentive, to look at the types of things and others that we've been talking about to make sure that we're managing those costs effectively, and also that we're doing the other things related to sustainability and energy conservation that are important. So we have all the incentive we need if we can figure out how to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Morgan. It looks like Elaine has lost audio. So Elaine, hopefully we can help you out with that in the chat. But in the meantime, we will go on to the next question here. And I believe maybe Kyle, you could help us out with this. But the question is a purchasing power agreement, which usually is called a power purchase agreement, the same thing as energy as a service agreement, which is sometimes called efficiency as a service? So yeah, Kyle.
Yeah, so there's a yes and no. I sort of think of them, or power purchase agreements are the square to the rectangle that is energy as a service agreement. But there are definite differences between the two, and we have fact sheets that delve into the mechanics of both, accessible through the Financing Navigator. In short, power purchase agreements are defined as generally delivering power to the recipient, to the customer, at a certain dollar per kilowatt hour rate. Where energy as a service agreements will define the delivery of the service through a wide variety of methods. They may define a specific outcome that's going to be achieved, like well-lit spaces or well-heated spaces, or they may define the contract as a percentage of savings for whatever of shared savings for whatever is generated through the contract. The other main difference is that in power purchase agreements, that's used as shorthand for a particular type of financing style where there's an outsourced legal entity that will usually be the owner of the equipment that is taking advantage of any investment trade credits or RECs, renewable energy credits, that are generated from the project. So they are generally referred to a particular method of third-party finance where energy as a service is again a little more flexible and references a larger variety of approaches for third-party financing structures.
Excellent. Thanks so much for clearing that up, Kyle. So the next question we have here, I believe we'll direct to Morgan, and we're still working on Elaine's audio issues. But Morgan, how would you suggest to best connect with a utility to understand or take advantage of a rebate? How do you know what's out there?
Great question, Hannah. And I think in our case, we have an objective of managing the relationship that we have with our major interproviders, including our regulated utilities. And we find that at least here, and I suspect it's true other places, that each of them probably has some form of customer relationship management program. And so if they're not reaching out to you, I would suggest reaching out to them. And particularly when utilities are a significant part of your budget. There's, I think, so much opportunity and so much exposure, relative to cost management, that it's probably something that, as people who are responsible for the efficient use of resources within our institutions, we spend some energy, no pun intended, to do. And so we make that an objective. And we have formal goals in terms of reducing our cost per student, cost per gross square foot, also changing the attributes of that use of resources to reduce use of energy and the cost of it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Morgan. Elaine, I see that your video popped off and back on. Would you like to test your audio?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, that looks like we can still hear you. So,
okay.
Wonderful, Elaine. So, I actually, I think we'll go, maybe, I know that we've already answered this question, but Elaine, our first question was just about in the state of Pennsylvania, if there was anything that was prohibiting you from being able to reinvest savings back into projects. So if you want to just quickly address that, that'll probably be our last question for Q&A here. Yeah,
there was nothing that prohibits reinvestment. One thing that we did run into was that our law department determined that labor agreements, like minimum wage or prevailing wage agreements, do apply to the contractors constructing the array through the power purchase agreement. So that's one thing you might want to check into if you're a public institution and there are labor agreements covering you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Elaine. We do have just a couple of other conclusion slides to go through, but before that, Megan, anything else that you'd like to add on behalf of NACUBO, or a resource that came to mind as our presenters were speaking today?
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, so we have some additional NACUBO resources that you'll find at the end of this slide deck, so please feel free to make use of those. And please, of course, feel free to reach out to me. I handle this area of policy at NACUBO, so please absolutely If you are a higher ed institution, whether you're a NACUBO member or not, feel free to reach out to us with any questions.
Excellent. Well, this was our next slide. So I'm glad you went in for it. And again, these slides will be available to you in about a week. So you can click through these. We also, this is just one session in a full summer series session for Better Buildings. So you can also join us for all of these. I know NACUBO also has a lot of other webinars and education materials out there. The next webinar will be on June 29th, and it's called What's Hot with Heat Pumps. I've been hearing a lot about heat pumps lately, so I hope you all tune in to hear what's hot. And finally, you can watch all of our recordings, including this one, eventually on an on-demand webinar through the Better Buildings Solution Center. So you can explore by topic or geographic region, since this also came up a lot today, or even by barrier and solution, so you can navigate those resources. And finally, I would just like to give another big thank you to all of our panelists today for sharing your experiences and your solutions on campus. And again, to NACUBO for partnering with us on this webinar. We know that now more than ever, it's been a really tough time in financing, but now more than ever, sustainability initiatives and energy efficiency are critical to campus and the broader world. So thank you all for the work that you do. I hope that the questions we didn't get to, you can reach out to our panelists, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.